You know, on the surface, it looks like just another simple kid's nursery rhyme. But if you look a little closer, this popular Hindi song is actually a fascinating three-act play. Seriously, it takes us on this wild journey from a story about teamwork to some seriously surreal poetry, and then bam, right into the world of modern advertising. So let's break this thing down.
It all kicks off with this really charming line. One fat elephant went for a walk. I mean, that's a classic opening, right? But don't let that simplicity fool you, because this one elephant is about to start a much, much bigger adventure than you'd expect.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start by following that elephant's journey, which leads us to the power of teamwork. Then, we're going to take a sharp turn into a very strange bedtime story. After that, we'll see how these rhymes transform into a pitch for an app. And finally, we'll talk about what this all reveals about the kind of stuff kids are watching these days.
All right, let's dive into Act 1, The Elephant's Journey. This part is set up just like a classic adventure story. You've got your hero, they're on a quest, and of course, there's an obstacle they have to overcome.
So picture this. Our hero, this lone elephant, gets stuck out in a rainstorm, and he's scared and all alone, so he does the most important thing he could possibly do. He calls for a friend. And that one simple act, that sets up the entire theme for this first part of the song.
And that, of course, brings us to Act 2, the power of teamwork. Because as this little community of elephants starts to grow, well, so do the challenges that they have to face together.
The whole mechanic of this rhyme is just this simple, beautiful buildup. One elephant calls another, who calls another, and another, until boom, there are 5 of them. With every new friend that shows up, their little community gets stronger, and so does their ability to face whatever comes next.
And what's so fascinating is that as the group gets bigger, the problems they run into get more and more absurd. I mean, first, 2 elephants can't squeeze down a narrow path. Okay, then 3 of them can't ride a tiny little bicycle. Then 4 of them manage to break a whole vegetable cart. And finally, all 5 of them get tangled up in a monkey's net. The stakes just keep getting weirder with every new teammate.
But here's the most important part. The elephants don't use their big, strong elephant power to break free. Nope, the solution actually comes from an outsider, the monkey, who just comes along and removes the net. So the story ends not with force, but with cooperation and a big party. It's actually a really sweet lesson in community.
Okay, so just when you think you've got the moral of the story all figured out, the whole thing just flips on its head. We completely leave that logical, sweet story about the elephants and dive headfirst into a strange, surreal, almost dreamlike bedtime story.
Now, to really get what's happening here, we need to talk about something called nonsense verse. Basically, it's a style of writing, usually for kids, that just throws logic out the window on purpose. The goal isn't to tell a story that makes sense, but to create this playful, funny, and kind of dreamlike feeling by connecting things that have no business being connected.
So the scene starts out simply enough. The fan is on. Below, Ajay is sleeping. It totally feels like a lullaby. The kid gets hungry, someone brings him some peanuts. But then the logic just completely falls apart. The peanuts are empty.
In this line right here, this perfectly captures that surreal logic. It jumps from talking about an empty peanut shell directly to denying a family relationship. There's no peanut in the kernel, we are not your maternal uncle. I mean, what? There's absolutely no logical connection between those two thoughts, and that is exactly the point. It's just meant to be absurdly funny.
And the rhyme just keeps going down this bizarre path. This uncle, who we were just told isn't our uncle, goes to a city, comes back with a parrot, and then the parrot sings a song. As you can see, each step is just a complete non sequitur. It's like a weird chain of images you'd see in a dream.
And then the entire verse just repeats itself, but with different names. Ajay becomes Muni. This is the big giveaway that this section isn't about characters or plot at all. It's just a formula, a soothing, nonsensical chant that's actually perfect for a lullaby.
So after that completely surreal journey, we slam into the third and final act. The video pivots hard one more time, moving away from any kind of storytelling and straight into a commercial.
All of a sudden, we're listening to a jingle for an app called Apples and Bananas, and the song is just listing off all its features in this catchy little tune. You get stories, puzzles, games, you can learn English and math, you can do coloring activities. It's a classic edutainment sales pitch.
And unlike the rhymes that came before it, there is absolutely zero ambiguity here. The journey ends with a crystal clear, direct instruction: download the app. The art has now officially turned into an advertisement.
So, what are we supposed to make of all this? Well, this single piece of kids' content was really a journey in 3 completely distinct acts,
and each one had a totally different purpose.
First, we got a traditional story about teamwork. Then, Act 2 was a surreal lullaby designed to be soothing and funny. And finally, Act 3 was a straight-up commercial jingle designed to sell a product. This structure is kind of like a miniature version of how a lot of modern kids' media works. It starts with a story, moves to playful engagement, and ends with a direct pitch to buy something.
And that leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. In a world where our children's stories are so often tangled up with sales pitches, what do we gain from that? Maybe more access, more engagement, but what parts of pure, simple storytelling might we be losing along the way?